Have you ever wondered why your attention is drawn to certain things while ignoring others? Today, we'll uncover what happens in those moments when everything suddenly shifts and your perception changes. Imagine a moment when everything you believed suddenly shifted, like a flip of a switch, and your entire perspective on the world was altered. What if I told you that there's a fundamental mechanism at play in how our consciousness interacts with the information field around us? Let me explain. Your finger stopped scrolling exactly here, not 3 posts ago, not 2 posts from now, but right here, this specific moment where your attention collapsed onto these words instead of the infinite other possibilities competing for your awareness. You think that was random. You think your attention just happened to land on this particular arrangement of pixels among the millions flowing past your eyes today. But what actually occurred in those microseconds before you stopped scrolling? A quantum measurement took place in your neural architecture that selected this specific outcome from a probability distribution of all possible next moments. And that measurement wasn't random. It was chosen by a pattern recognition system in your consciousness that detected something your rational mind hasn't consciously registered yet. The quantum field doesn't operate through cosmic favoritism or divine selection. What's actually happening is far more interesting and far more verifiable through direct experience. Your consciousness exists in continuous quantum interaction with information fields around you, processing millions of probability collapses per second without conscious recognition. But occasionally, rarely, your consciousness detects a specific pattern in the probability distribution that indicates something significant. A configuration of information that contains relevance to trajectories your deeper awareness is navigating, even if your surface consciousness hasn't articulated what those trajectories are. When this detection occurs, it manifests as attention collapse. Your scrolling stops. You experience this as choosing to stop. But the quantum measurement preceded the conscious choice. Something in these words matched a pattern your deeper systems have been scanning for. And now you're here reading this, probably oscillating between dismissing it as clickbait manipulation and sensing that something genuine is actually occurring. Both responses are valid. Both exist in superposition until you collapse into one. But here's what makes this moment different from every other time you've stopped scrolling on exaggerated claims. I'm not going to tell you that you're special, chosen, or destined for anything. I'm going to show you how to verify for yourself whether what I'm describing is actual mechanism or just persuasive language. And that verification process will reveal something about how consciousness interfaces with probability fields that most people never discover because they collapse too quickly into certainty about what's real and what's not. The pattern your consciousness detected. Let's start with what actually happened when your attention stopped here. You were in a state researchers call continuous partial attention, scrolling through content without deep focus, allowing your perceptual system to perform rapid surface-level evaluations. Each post, each image, each headline got processed just enough to determine whether it warranted deeper attention. Your system was executing thousands of micro-measurements, collapsing probability waves about what each piece of content meant, whether it was relevant, whether it deserved more than passing notice. Almost everything got collapsed into irrelevant and moved past. But something about this particular configuration of words triggered a different collapse pattern. Your pattern recognition systems operate on multiple levels simultaneously. The surface level processes semantic meaning, the literal content of words. But deeper levels process structural patterns, emotional resonance, cognitive dissonance signals, novelty detection, and something researchers are only beginning to understand: quantum coherence signatures in information fields. When information contains certain types of coherence, certain patterns of organization that indicate non-random structure, your consciousness detects this before semantic processing completes. It's similar to how your visual system detects faces faster than it can identify whose face you're seeing. The pattern recognition precedes detailed analysis. The title you encountered contained a specific coherent signature. It made a claim about quantum mechanics that was neither pure mysticism nor pure materialism. It suggested direct verifiability rather than requiring belief, and it contained an acknowledgement of your skepticism built into its structure. These elements together created a pattern that your deeper awareness recognized as potentially containing genuine information rather than manipulation or entertainment. This doesn't mean the recognition was correct. Pattern recognition systems produce false positives constantly. But it does mean something in your neural architecture collapsed attention toward this specific content from the probability field of all available content. And that collapse is worth examining because it reveals how your consciousness actually navigates information space, what quantum selection actually means. The phrase "the quantum field chose you" sounds like New Age mysticism, like the universe has intention and agency and personally selected you for some special purpose. This interpretation is precisely wrong in ways that prevent understanding what's actually occurring. The quantum field doesn't have intention. It doesn't choose in the sense of preferring one outcome over another. What's actually happening is this: your consciousness exists as a localized pattern of quantum coherence within the broader field. As you move through space and time, your localized pattern interacts with information patterns in your environment. These interactions produce interference effects, regions where your pattern and environmental patterns amplify or cancel each other. When amplification occurs, when your pattern and an environmental information pattern resonate constructively, the probability of your attention collapsing onto that pattern increases dramatically. It's not that the field chose you. It's that your specific configuration of consciousness had high quantum overlap with this specific configuration of information. The resonance between patterns increased the probability of this interaction occurring compared to all other possible attention collapses you could have made in this moment. This is measurable, predictable physics operating in biological systems, not mystical selection. But here's where it gets interesting. Your consciousness configuration isn't static. It's constantly being shaped by your history, your current concerns, your implicit goals, and your subconscious processing. The pattern you carry right now is different from the pattern you carried last week and different from the pattern you'll carry next month, which means the information patterns you resonate with, the content that captures your attention through quantum overlap shifts continuously based on your evolving configuration. Some people will resonate with this content today who wouldn't have last year. Others resonated with similar content years ago, but won't now. The resonance isn't about the information being universally significant. It's about your current configuration having specific overlap with this information structure at this moment. So when I say the quantum field chose you, what I mean precisely is your current consciousness configuration had sufficient quantum overlap with this information pattern to produce high probability of attention collapse compared to competing patterns. You're here because of resonance, not selection. And that resonance is telling you something about your current configuration that might be useful if you know how to interpret the signal. The verification protocol. Most content that makes claims about quantum consciousness or universal selection either demands you believe without evidence or provides unfalsifiable mystical assertions. This is different. I'm going to give you a specific protocol to verify whether quantum resonance is actually occurring or whether you're just experiencing confirmation bias and suggestibility. This protocol was developed by cognitive scientists studying attention capture and information resonance in decision-making contexts. It's not mystical. It's empirical methodology you can execute right now to test whether genuine pattern matching is occurring at quantum cognitive levels. First step, close your eyes and bring your attention to your body. Not in a meditative or spiritual sense, just direct sensory awareness. Notice the quality of your physical state right now. Are you relaxed or tense, energized or depleted, focused or scattered? Don't interpret or judge. Just register the actual felt sense of your current state. This establishes a baseline measurement of your system before you engage further with this content. If quantum resonance is actually occurring, your state will show specific signatures different from normal content consumption. Second step, recall the moment when your scrolling stopped. Don't reconstruct a narrative about why you stopped. Instead, access the actual felt sense of that moment of attention collapse. What was the quality of the pull you experienced? Was it curiosity-driven, anxiety-driven, hope-driven, or something else entirely? Again, Don't interpret, just notice the signature of the attentional shift. Genuine quantum resonance produces a distinct feeling different from emotional manipulation or intellectual curiosity. It has a quality of recognition rather than discovery, like remembering something you forgot rather than learning something new. Third step, notice your current state of cognitive coherence. Are you maintaining multiple interpretations of what you're reading in superposition, or have you collapsed into certainty about whether this is valid or invalid? If you've collapsed completely into this is true or this is false, you're not in the quantum state being discussed. Quantum cognitive coherence requires maintaining superposition of possibilities without premature collapse. The verification process doesn't work from collapsed certainty. It requires staying in the uncertainty long enough to observe what patterns emerge from sustained engagement. Fourth step, over the next 72 hours, pay attention to what else captures your attention without intention. Don't look for patterns. Don't try to make connections. Just notice what you find yourself naturally drawn to in your information consumption, your conversations, your random thoughts. If genuine quantum resonance occurred, you'll notice a cluster of related patterns showing up across different domains. Themes that connect back to whatever configuration in your consciousness resonated with this content. These clusters aren't coincidence, they're signatures of your current attentional field selecting information based on quantum overlap with your evolving concerns. If you execute this protocol and find no distinctive signature in any of these steps, then what happened was standard attention capture through marketing optimization, not quantum resonance. You stopped scrolling because the title was engineered to trigger curiosity gaps and pattern interrupts, and there's nothing deeper occurring. But if you find the signatures I described, particularly the recognition quality and the subsequent pattern clustering, then something more interesting is happening that warrants further investigation. Why this matters now? The reason quantum selection mechanisms are becoming more relevant isn't that they're new. They've been operating in human consciousness since consciousness emerged. But something about current conditions is making more people aware of these mechanisms than previous generations. The information environment has reached a density and velocity where conscious filtering becomes impossible. You cannot deliberately evaluate every piece of content competing for your attention. Your conscious mind is too slow, too limited. So increasingly people are being forced to rely on subconscious pattern matching to navigate information space. And as they rely more on these deeper selection mechanisms, they start noticing that something is doing the selecting. Something with intelligence and discernment that isn't their conscious rational mind. This recognition that there's deeper intelligence operating beneath conscious awareness is spreading across populations rapidly. People describe it as intuition, gut feeling, synchronicity, or being in flow. But these are all observations of the same underlying mechanism, quantum coherence, in consciousness producing selective attention toward information patterns that have relevance to trajectories the system is navigating. As more people become aware of this mechanism, the collective information field starts reorganizing itself. Content that resonates at these deeper levels gets more attention regardless of its surface appeal. Information that lacks coherence gets filtered out even if it's optimized for conscious engagement. We're at an inflection point where the quantum selection mechanism is starting to dominate traditional attention capture techniques. This is why you're seeing increasing polarization in what content spreads. It's not just algorithmic bubble creation. It's that people's consciousness configurations are diverging into distinct attractors, and the content that resonates with each attractor is fundamentally different in its coherent structure, not just its ideological content. You can't fake quantum coherence through manipulation techniques. Either the information contains genuine pattern structure or it doesn't. And increasingly, people's subconscious systems are filtering out anything that lacks that structure, regardless of how it's packaged, the configuration you're carrying. As this recognition spreads and more people become aware of these mechanisms, we start to see a fundamental shift in how we approach information consumption and navigation. We begin to rely less on the surface level and more on the deeper patterns and structures that underlie our conscious experience. And what does this mean for your own life? It means recognizing that your attention is not just a passive recipient of information, but an active participant in shaping your perception of reality. It means understanding that the content you consume, the people you interact with, even your thoughts and emotions are all part of a larger web of patterns and structures that influence your conscious experience. It's time to start paying attention to these patterns, to recognize when they're at play in your life and how they might be influencing your perception of reality. By doing so, you can begin to take control of your own navigation through the information landscape. Imagine a world where information is not just a collection of facts, but a gateway to understanding the underlying mechanisms of reality, where the distinctions between object-level information and mechanism-level understanding become clear. The fourth step in our journey is to pay attention to what else captures your attention without intention. As you navigate through the vast expanse of available content, don't look for patterns or try to make connections. Just notice what you find yourself naturally drawn to. Are you drawn to topics that seem to be connected across different domains? Are there certain themes that keep showing up in your thoughts and conversations? These clusters aren't coincidence. They're signatures of your current attentional field, selecting information based on quantum overlap with your evolving concerns. The reason quantum selection mechanisms are becoming more relevant isn't that they're new. They've been operating in human consciousness since consciousness emerged. But something about current conditions is making more people aware of these mechanisms than previous generations. The information environment has reached a density and velocity where conscious filtering becomes impossible. Your conscious mind is too slow, too limited to evaluate every piece of content competing for your attention. So increasingly, you're being forced to rely on subconscious pattern matching to navigate information space. And as you rely more on these deeper selection mechanisms, you start noticing that something is doing the selecting. Something with intelligence and discernment that isn't your conscious, rational mind. This recognition that there's deeper intelligence operating beneath conscious awareness is spreading across populations rapidly. People describe it as intuition, gut feeling, synchronicity, or being in flow. But these are all observations of the same underlying mechanism, quantum coherence, in consciousness producing selective attention toward information patterns that have relevance to trajectories the system is navigating. As more people become aware of this mechanism, the collective information field starts reorganizing itself. Content that resonates at these deeper levels gets more attention regardless of its surface appeal. Information that lacks coherence gets filtered out even if it's optimized for conscious engagement. We're at an inflection point where the quantum selection mechanism is starting to dominate traditional attention capture techniques. This is why you're seeing increasing polarization in what content spreads. It's not just algorithmic bubble creation, it's that people's consciousness configurations are diverging into distinct attractors. And the content that resonates with each attractor is fundamentally different in its coherent structure, not just its ideological content. The choice point now lies before you. Right now, in this moment, you exist in superposition of multiple possible response patterns to this information. You could collapse into dismissal, deciding this is just sophisticated manipulation dressed up in quantum language. Or you could collapse into belief, accepting everything as true and looking for how to apply it. Or you could maintain superposition, holding multiple interpretations simultaneously while staying engaged with direct experience, rather than collapsing into conceptual certainty. Each of these collapses leads to a different trajectory through probability space. The dismissal collapse returns you to your previous pattern. The belief collapse might lead you toward communities and content that reinforce mystical interpretations of quantum mechanics. But the maintained superposition keeps more possibilities open and allows patterns to emerge that wouldn't be accessible from any single collapsed interpretation. The quantum field isn't choosing which collapse you make your consciousness, it's performing that measurement based on your configuration, your history, your current state. Becoming aware of this navigation process, recognizing that you're performing quantum measurements continuously that shape your trajectory is itself a significant shift in consciousness configuration. What actually happens when you stay in superposition? Most people read something like this have a momentary sense of expansion or possibility, and then collapse back into their default patterns within minutes. The momentary opening closes the previous framework reasserts itself, and whatever potential shift might have occurred gets filtered out by habitual collapse mechanisms. But there's a difference between healthy stability and rigid collapse that prevents evolution. If you're reading this and maintaining genuine superposition, not collapsing prematurely into certainty about what this means or whether it's valid, something specific is happening in your neural architecture. Your brain is sustaining quantum coherence in cognitive processes longer than habitual patterns normally permit. Multiple interpretations are being held in simultaneous awareness without forcing resolution. This state has metabolic costs. It requires more energy than collapsed certainty. Your system wouldn't sustain it unless something important is being processed that requires this level of cognitive flexibility. What's actually being processed? What your system is working on beneath conscious awareness is a reconfiguration of how you navigate reality. Your consciousness is exploring whether to maintain its current collapse patterns or to adopt new patterns that allow more fluid movement through possibility space. Maintaining superposition creates the space for meta-awareness to emerge the capacity to observe your own observation patterns from a position that isn't identical to those patterns. And if you actually do this exercise instead of just reading about it, you'll have direct experience of consciousness performing measurement and influencing probability collapse through attention direction. This is the mechanism operating whether you're aware of it or not. But becoming aware of it, learning to work with it deliberately rather than having it run on autopilot, is the difference between being carried by your patterns and consciously navigating through probability space. The real reason you're here beyond all the quantum mechanics, language, and consciousness theory, there's a simpler truth about why your attention stopped scrolling here. You're looking for confirmation that reality is more fluid than consensus culture acknowledges. These experiences created uncertainty about your reality model, the standard materialist framework where consciousness is just brain activity and meaning, is just projection started feeling insufficient. But you're also skeptical of mystical frameworks that require faith in unseen forces or cosmic consciousness. Now take a moment to verify this concept directly through your experience. Close your eyes. Simply notice your breath for exactly 7 breath cycles. Count them, don't try to control your breathing. Just allow the natural rhythm to guide you. As you sit in stillness, close your eyes and focus on your breath. Count each inhale and exhale until you reach 7. Let go of any need to control or alter your breathing. Simply observe the natural rhythm unfolding within you. In this quiet moment, you're performing intentional measurement that collapses probabilities in your neural firing patterns. Your mind will inevitably wander, thoughts and sensations attempting to pull your attention away from the task at hand. Each time you notice your mind straying and gently bring it back to counting, you're consciously selecting which neural patterns to reinforce and which to filter out. This mechanism operates on a larger scale than just this exercise, shaping the possibilities that actualize versus those that remain mere fantasy. When you directed your attention to this content, you trained conscious participation in the measurement process that gives rise to reality itself. The first thought or impulse that arises after completing the 7 cycles is a signal from your deeper processing about what your system is prioritizing beneath conscious awareness. It might be something mundane, a reminder of tasks to complete. It might be an emotional tone with no specific content, or perhaps an insight or question that emerges spontaneously when you release directed attention. Whatever it is, it's not random, it's your consciousness communicating its current navigation priorities. You're seeking a framework that matches your direct experience, one that explains the fluidity and participation you've sensed without requiring you to abandon critical thinking or embrace unfalsifiable claims. You want a middle path that acknowledges genuine fluidity and connection to physics while maintaining rigorous intellectual rigor. Consciousness isn't magical, but it's also not reducible to classical computation. Reality isn't predetermined, nor is it just whatever you believe it to be. You participate in probability collapse through observation and attention, but you're not omnipotent. The framework provides a nuanced understanding of consciousness and its role in shaping reality. The question now lies before you: what will you do with this recognition? Will you file away the experience as interesting reading and return to default patterns? Or will you take action to integrate it into your life? You can share it with others, externalizing the processing. Look for more content on quantum consciousness to avoid integration, or simply sit with the stirred-up emotions, allowing your system to process without forcing premature resolution. The quantum field hasn't chosen you for anything except this moment of potential recognition. What you do with that recognition, whether you collapse it into story or maintain it as living uncertainty, is entirely up to the measurements your consciousness performs from here forward. There's no right choice, no path you're supposed to take, just probability landscapes and the measurements that determine which trajectories actualize. If you're still here, still reading, still maintaining some degree of superposition about what this all means, then something genuine occurred. Your attention stopping wasn't random noise, but signal. A moment where your configuration overlapped with information structure in ways that created resonance. What that resonance is telling you, what trajectory it's indicating, might be worth exploring. Only you can determine through direct experimentation with your own experience. The quantum field is always choosing you, constantly collapsing probabilities through the measurement process of your continuous consciousness. But most of those collapses happen automatically, unconsciously, according to patterns you didn't choose. This moment is different only if you make it different by using this recognition to start participating consciously in measurements that have been running on autopilot your entire life. Don't skip what comes next. Not the next piece of content, but the next moment of your